Hey everybody, here we are. Check out my fancy intro. How cool is that? We're like a podcast now, aren't we? I'm very, very blown away. Hats off to I said to Matthias, we need an intro because after last week, when we did the whole takeover thing, I was on with John Redmond and the guys from Murdo. I was like, we've got to do better on ours. And since I've got Vinit with me this week, we've rolled out the red carpet, mate. So there we go. We've got an intro and everything. We're basically broadcast television these days. But anyway, we are live. We are back as normal this week. Obviously, I have got a guest. Do say hi if you're in the group, guys. We'll try and see that. Nishit Kurtak says hi, Vinit. I don't know if you obviously know. Nishit's a cool guy. We've been around an awful long time. So it's great to have everybody here. And I think this is just so well timed to have Vinit with us this week, because I think that some of the stuff that Vinit's going to share with us is just so pertinent. We're seeing, I've definitely seen an uptick in the last couple of weeks of people reaching out to me, hitting weekly invitation limits and things like that on LinkedIn, and saying, "Well, Mike, what's the strategy?" And I said, "Well, did you not watch the Facebook Live back in January? Go and watch that." Kind of talked about it, but equally, the fact is, we've got to make the most of what we do. We've got to build those relationships. We've got to work on all of that stuff. But ultimately, the end game of all of that is it's all well and good doing the social bit and the marketing and all this stuff that we can do on LinkedIn and Clubhouse and all these other platforms. But at the end of the day, we've got to make sales. It's social selling. And I think it's a thing that all of us can always improve. I've been I got my first sales job when I was 15. And I left home and did, that's how I went off to be a sales guy and make my riches and stuff. I don't think it matters how long you've been in the game. I think revisiting stuff. And, I was just checking in. Vinny's got some awesome training. We'll talk about that a little bit in a little bit of a while. But checking in I was just reviewing some of the courses that Vinny has produced. And, the one on the first intro, it says how even they watch their own training when they're getting ready to go into a course, because you've got to be refreshed. You've constantly got to be, refreshing those skills. So you're on point, and you can actually close the deals when we get those appointments. So, Vinit, man, it's so awesome to have you here. Vinit, I've known you about a year now, and I feel like I've known you for years and years and years. It's weird, but I'm so grateful to you coming on. I think, the work that you're doing with the London School of Sales is just fantastic. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the London School of Sales before we get into your presentation?
Sure. So thank you, Mike, and it's amazing to be here. So London School of Sales was founded because there is an issue in the sales industry. So specifically in the UK, we have the highest turnover out of any industry. 27% of salespeople are made redundant or sacked, leave their jobs every year, higher than any other industry. At the same time, when managers are promoted, between 40 and 60% of them fail within the first 18 months. That's the real reason why London School of Sales exists. We exist to create better practices. We exist to provide and promote better sales training. We are a disruptor. We don't look at classroom-based training. We want to provide sales training on demand when people need it the most. That's why we exist, and we want to make it affordable. We want to make it accessible. That's the mission behind why London School of Sales exists.
I think you're well on with it, mate. I have to say, and can I just say, and we were talking about this before we started to stream. Looking through the material that you produce, it's just such good quality. I consume a lot of this kind of thing. And watching yours is like a breath of fresh air because it's just so easy to consume and great. So I'm great. And we're going to get a taste of that right now. And you're actually going to share some cool stuff with us. So what I'll do is I think it's probably going to be better if I remove the stream, but let me add your presentation in and hopefully you should be able to do the driving for us, Vinit.
Okay, brilliant. So you can see the screen. So look, what I want to start with is for today, I haven't actually got material from the course in terms of the look and feel because it is very interactive and I'd need to actually go live in the content and I wasn't actually sure if it would actually work. But what I am going to do is share 7 tips from the Essential Sales Skills course. Now, I'm a user of sales automation myself. And sales automation, you need it to do the heavy lifting. And when you're doing social selling, I think social selling is now synonymous with the sales cycle. You have to be available and on social media sites to have that kind of brand awareness. So the one thing that I want everyone to kind of keep front of mind is the sales funnel. So awareness, lead, interest, and then the sale. And the tips that I'm going to share, they are sector agnostic. They're universal, whether you're food to finance, advertising to academia. The tips work across all of the sectors. Okay. So the first tip that I'm actually going to share is about personality types. Now, at the start of your social selling process, you probably are driving or pushing out content that is to attract a certain type of customer. But when that customer actually engages with you, how much effort and work do you actually place in understanding what personality type they are? For me, this is one of the most important things in sales, because if you're able to understand their personality type, you're going to be able to communicate to them in a way in which you're able to push the sale quicker. Okay. Now, a lot of people back in the day would have referred to this as mirroring. It isn't mirroring. This is actually beyond mirroring. This is actually going on a deeper level. So let me give you an example. Let's just say, hypothetically, you are targeting very senior people, CEOs of organizations. Now, typically, when you engage with those individuals, what you'll find is that they are pretty direct individuals. It's difficult in today's environment to understand those personality types without having met them. So on that Zoom call, the first kind of rapport building conversations you have should be to understand what type of personality they are. Because whatever you say next, you have to adjust your style so that you're giving them the information in the best possible way for them to consume it. I would say that most CEOs will fall in the category of a driver. Now, a driver likes to be communicated with in a direct way. They're going to ask you a direct question. They want a direct answer back. They don't want you to fill that answer out with technical detail. Okay. In the same way, if you are working with an analytical personality type, let's just say, for an example, an accountant or someone who's technically minded, they're going to want the detail. So they are very comfortable with detail. So when they ask you a question, they're going to want you to actually display your understanding of that detail and what it means and how it actually works. There's a couple of other personality types there as well. One is called amiable. So amiable individuals are people's people. They're very palatable. And really, you need to bring them into that conversation. And finally, you've got the expressive. So these guys are really eccentric. Think about entrepreneurs who are out there. They're constantly talking about themselves. Now, to engage with these types of individuals, you need to actually get them to talk about themselves. You need to talk about your product and maybe some of the awards that you've won, some of the big clients that you work with. You need to get them excited. So my point is that when you start your social selling strategy, make sure you're already at that point thinking about the types of personalities that are going to be coming into your sales funnel, because you need to actually talk to them in the way in which they like. Linked to this is also introverts and extroverts. Now, Mike, what would you consider yourself, an introvert or an extrovert?
Oh, I'm definitely a very introverted, shy. I'm probably extroverted, I think.
So let me ask you a question. When you are dealing with someone who is introverted, you will ask a question, and then what happens next? If that introverted person goes quiet, what do you do? Well,
through training, I try not to answer for them, but there is the temptation to just, let's move the conversation along. I know what I'm at. It's probably a loaded question anyway, isn't it? So
it is, but you've had the training, but there's a lot of people out there, because they're introverted, they get nervous because they're extroverted, they get nervous when the introvert doesn't answer. So what they do is they start filling that void with the sound of their own voice. And the introvert actually is really comfortable in the silence. So as an extrovert, you have to hold back, as Mike said. But also what the introvert is doing is they're using that silence to process. They're using that silence to actually understand what their response should be and how they should reply to you. If you're an extrovert dealing with an introvert, the best thing that you can do is use the silence to tell you the answer. If after several seconds they don't answer, give them a little prompt or ask the question in a different way. Okay. The second tip, and this is probably...
Not just to interrupt really quickly, because that's such a great tip, and I just wanted to just share, because you're probably aware of it. I don't know if people in the group are there, but there's a really interesting tool called Crystalnose, which is I use that a hell of a lot. I think there's a free trial. I think there might even be a free version of it, but it will plug into your LinkedIn, into your emails and things like that. And it's scary good way of it. It's quite good at figuring out a person's personality type. And if they've actually taken, like a disc type personality thing or whatever, it's really good at figuring that out. So I often, before I'm going into a call, I'll run that as a on each of the people in the meeting, because it's sometimes it's so useful to get that heads up, especially like exactly as you've just described there, where there's probably a tendency for me to start talking over people or interrupting them before they share their second tip and things like that. It's great to have that heads up and think, okay, that's, there's a likelihood that guy's probably not going to be impressed if that's the way I try and talk to him. So yeah, great. Crystalnose. We'll share the link afterwards, or maybe Matthias can share that in the comments now if he's able to find a link to it. But I would highly recommend checking that out, because it speaks to that tip really, really well. Sorry, mate.
No. And you know what? That's great, because that's exactly the type of research that individuals should be doing before they actually meet that person. I mean, you've done so much work to get that engagement. You want to make sure you put your best foot forward. So if there are, tools like Crystal are absolutely brilliant, and people should be using them if they have access to them. So look, the second tip is building an effective questioning strategy. Now, for me, asking the right question at the right moment in the sales cycle is the most important thing. The thing is, a lot of people think that you're asking questions when you're in face-to-face with the customer, but actually that's not true. Your questioning phase actually starts on social media. You're reaching out to individuals, trying to engage with them. You're posting content which you're trying to actually attract your target audience. So the way you have to look at it is, again, if you imagine the funnel, at the top of that funnel in the universe, you're asking questions just to attract really wide open questions to get people into your funnel. If they come one level down into the awareness phase, again, it's an open question, but something a little bit more specific to your product. So it could be, why did you decide on that particular strategy? Now, in the middle of the funnel, you need to ask probing questions. So specific questions that your product solves in terms of the pain points that it solves for that particular prospect. And then when you go further down the funnel, you start asking closed choice questions. So is your specific focus on retention or new business development? And then finally, at the end of that process, when you're about to close the sale, it's more closed questions about yes or no. Would you like the contract to start this month, next month, etc., etc.? For me, asking the right question, most important thing, but something that's really linked to this is your ability to listen. And a lot of people need to actually develop that ability to actively listen. And I know, Mike, that's something that again, I know you read so many books, and I remember you recently saying that that's one of the big things that you've recently read or previously as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. But I think that whole questioning thing, and I think one of the other points that really resonates with me there as well is, I think, and I know this is part of your mission as well, with regards to the way that salespeople are perceived. It's like almost this dirty word. Nobody wants to be a salesman. Nobody wants to be a sleazy salesperson. Mm-hmm. We use that in our marketing because it's a pain point. None of us want to be perceived as that kind of sleazy person. And I think I've probably read most of the popular sales books over the years at some point, and some of those kind of hard-nosed, hard sell closing, close the deal type things, and there's this close and there's that close. What you've just said there is actually, if you're doing the questioning properly and intelligently, by the time you get to the close, you're not doing you're not doing some weird multiple choice, let me call my manager type of thing. It's just pure detail. That's the deal's pretty much done at that point. You're talking about the actual implementation of how it's going to go forward. So there's no, hey, do you want to use my pen or yours? It is just purely, well, how is this going to fit? How is this going to actually run?
The funny thing is what you're saying there is a lot of people actually have a separate strategy for social selling and then a different strategy for once they're engaged with the person. It actually has to be synonymous. It has to be a follow-on from what plans you had on social selling to when you're actually having the face-to-face engagement. So yeah, really, really important. The third tip is around the use of stories and using them to paint a picture to tell a better alternative. Now, my simple rule with stories is keep them simple, jargon-free, and focus on the problem that your prospect, your customer has. Because that's what they're really interested in. How can you help them solve that problem that they have at the moment? One of the things that I listen to a lot of sales pitches, and there are so many salespeople that focus on features. So our product has this reporting tool. It allows you to do this. It allows you to use a green screen and so on and so forth. Actually, your customer probably doesn't care about any of those things. All they're interested in is, I've got this particular problem. Can you help me solve that problem? So all of your stories should be designed around that. And the simple way of looking at it is problem, your service, and the outcome. And when I say outcome, quantify it. So in percentage terms, in time terms, in saving terms, think about a relevant metric that is going to help your customer to see the value that you've been able to provide in helping a past customer overcome that particular challenge and problem. I'd also say here, I think if you have multiple products or you have multiple facets to your product, then think of a story for each one. And I'm sure that you've probably helped so many customers in the past that you'll have specific stories that be able to use for each one. To give you an example, one of the ones that I use is my ability to help individuals, and it's very intangible, by the way. It's to help individuals change their mindset from fixed to growth, and the process that we actually go through that to help them overcome those barriers that are holding them back over a kind of 1-2 month period. So you've just got to find what resonates with your customer base. Mike, I don't know if you have anything in terms of...
Yeah, I mean, it's just such great advice, Vin. It really is. And especially in the context of social, because, and I talk about this a lot, that nobody's interested in our products and our features, and definitely not on social media. They're interested in people. It's a social media platform, and a story is inherently a social thing. It's how we've shared information between tribes or whatever since we were cavemen and so on. So I think it works a lot. And I think the other point that you made there about telling stories about the benefits is just so true. And I always come back to I've done a lot of Frank Kern's training, and some of it is I don't necessarily use all the time. But one thing that always rings in my ears is a bit of advice he gave, which is whenever you're talking about a feature, add on to it the words "so you can," and because it forces you to then, I've got this really cool blue widget and it does this, so you can fill in the blank. And I do that whenever I'm copywriting, whenever I'm sending an email, because it just forces me to think, what is the actual benefit to this person? What they're going to get from it. So that's really what I need to communicate, not the fancy features or whatever.
Absolutely. And, you used a really important word there, copy. I think good copy is so undervalued. And you can tell, a mile away on social media who's actually got good copy and who doesn't. So,
Yeah.
If you care about your content, if you care about what you do, then absolutely you want to invest in good copy. The fourth tip is about handling objections. Now, how many people look at objections in a negative way? For me, I get excited when a customer raises an objection. Okay, 10% of the time, the customer raises an objection and I'm not going to be able to overcome it. Fine, I get that. But the other 90% of the times, I'm actually thinking, great, because the individual is actually thinking about my product or service. You know, I see objections as opportunities. Objections it's an opportunity for me to explain to the customer how I helped other customers who had the same issue. So, i.e., telling that story again. It's another opportunity for me to collect feedback to make my product or service better. It's an opportunity for me to tweak my pitch. It's an opportunity for me to ask more questions. So, objections completely turn it on its head. It's a positive thing. And you've got to just actually train your mind to say, right, okay, how can I create a better alternative using the new information that I have? I think at this point as well, it's really important to say that, and Mike, you made reference to it from the video in the start of the Sales Essentials course. We refer back to all of this content all of the time, because if I'm going through an objection, I get it. Sometimes you're overwhelmed. You've got so many things going on that it's difficult to actually kind of look at the wood from the trees. So I'm constantly going back and looking at this content that we've created to say, right, how can I actually tackle this issue in a different way? So refreshing and having kind of refresher training all the time is really, really important, especially before you're having sales conversations.
Yeah, I agree more.
So fifth tip is about creating and maintaining urgency. Now, I'm sure that we've all had someone pitch to us and then send us a time-sensitive offer. You know, it's valid until this Friday, or the price goes up by 10%, 15%, etc. That is a form of creating urgency, but it's a very trivial form of creating urgency. If you want to create real urgency, then you've got to do it from your social media campaigns and planning process. The questions that you ask, understanding your customers' problems and actually having something effective that's going to be able to help them is where the real process of creating and maintaining urgency starts. The best way that I can explain it to you is think of it as a series of milestones, starting from that engagement meeting that you have. The fact that they committed to that meeting is a milestone, and it created an amount of urgency because they had a problem that they wanted to fix. Now, if at that meeting you have a follow-up, that creates a little bit of urgency. But at that meeting, if you ask them to supply you with some information, that creates further urgency. So as you go down the sales cycle from awareness through to you asking those probing questions and then further and further down that sales cycle, the more milestones you can have where you're actually engaging them and getting them to send information and share with you, it creates urgency. It's like a series of small milestones that ultimately, when you get to the end, the close is just a next step. Does that make sense, Mike? Does that?
Yeah, I think, and I think that, again, it speaks back to understanding about asking those right questions, doesn't it? Because I think if you're asking, and that's how I approach it when I'm working through a set of discovery and before that, what's the cost of lost opportunity? What are the actual implications for not doing this later rather than sooner? And very often, I've found that when people have actually given that real thought, that's when they're like, yeah, geez, we're better. We need to get this done sooner rather than later. In actual fact, and this, it moves itself along at that point. There's and I think that I think all of these tips. The thing that I'm seeing in all of these, Vinny, is that it's not about being a sleazy salesman. It's about really truly understanding how the products and services we have to offer are going to work in somebody else's business or whatever, and then helping them understand that as well. And I think if you're doing that, then again, there's no cheesy closes or sleazy anything. There's no need to be all spammy about it. It's quite a pleasant thing to do. It's, people often, I imagine, I wonder if you've had this, Philip, people often said to me when, I presented myself as in the sales industry, I'm like, oh God, I couldn't do that. And and it's like, I genuinely, a sale well made is a pleasant experience. I really do believe that.
Listen, at the end of the day, my mission is to help people solve a certain problem. If I do that, I get a buzz out of it.
Yeah.
And the people that I can't help, well, the next best thing I can do is actually offer them an alternative. Maybe it's not my service, it's something else. But I guarantee you that by going through that process, they'll remember you. And at one day, your paths will cross again. And if you help them now, I'm sure that I believe in karma, it will come back to you tenfold in the future as well.
100%.
And funnily enough as well, just something on creating urgency. What I also tend to find here is that if you're unable to get that commitment from a prospect or from a customer, I think that tells you a lot about where they are in their decision-making process. So a lot of people will try and push that sale because they don't want to lose that customer. Actually, that tells you a lot. That person isn't ready to buy. You might need to move them back a little bit in terms of the process and just reevaluate the questions that you were asking. So leading on from creating and maintaining urgency is negotiation, the dreaded word negotiation. Now, we don't negotiate on a transactional sale, but the most important rule with negotiation is don't negotiate with yourself. Don't actually quote a price and then say, was that too expensive? I'm not sure, whatever. The most important thing you don't want to do is have post-traumatic sales regret. Could have, should have, would have. If you found yourself going through that cycle, then actually you're setting yourself up. So one of the, again, let's take an example here, okay? If you offer a customer a price at the beginning of the conversation, in my experience, what you'll find is that if someone is truly interested, they will not talk to you about price again until they get to this stage. If someone starts at the beginning of the conversation, negotiating on the price, they don't actually know or understand the value of your product or service. And they are probably the wrong type of customer for you. So that for me is always a red herring because I haven't even shown them anything. I haven't even talked to them about the stories, about the value that I can deliver, how it can change what they do. So at that point, it would be a massive red herring for me. But now, if at this stage, after you've gone through those previous steps, you're negotiating with someone, you've pitched a price, and they've actually said, listen, I think it's expensive. Can you do something on the price? Let's just say, for argument's sake, you want to offer them a discount. The most important thing is that you get something in return. If you simply gave that person a discount and didn't get anything in return, as the buyer, I'm thinking, well, you were charging 10% or however many percent too much for your product. Okay, so the technical term here is something called tradables. You need to create a list of tradables that you're able to offer. Those tradables are valuable to your customer. They're valuable to you, but it's something that your customer can give you. So give you an example. If me and Mike were negotiating and I offered him a 10% he wanted a 10% discount. The first thing that I would do is say, what can I get for that 10%? So it could be a testimonial. It could be a referral. It could be for him to come in and do a training session for my team. So you always have to get something in return. If you're going to give a discount, make sure you get something in return. That's the crucial thing with negotiation. I don't know if you have any kind of examples.
I'm just stood here smiling and nodding because it's so easy when you're trying to get a deal in, and I definitely am weak on this. And what you've just said there, I'm totally going to take that on board because I think when you are pushing and somebody is trying to bargain hard with you or whatever, it is easy. It's this easy option to just cave in and go, oh yeah, no worries, have the discount. And of course, whenever I've done that in the past, I go away and think the thing is, I might have given them 10% off, the retail cost, but that's actually 30% of my margin or 40% of my margin I've just given away. So now I've got to deliver, and I'm only going to make, about half as much of the money that I needed to actually make the thing worthwhile. So you've got that regret. I think that idea of, I'm going to do that more often. I'm missing a trick there, Vinit. So thank you for that one.
But also, just think about it this way. If you give a discount today, you don't get anything for it. The customer's thinking in their head, I could have asked more, right? The next time you go to sell something to that customer or you have a renewal, you go through the same issue again. And this time they're probably going to ask for something bigger.
Yeah.
So by nipping it in the bud at the beginning, they know if they want something, they're going to have to give something as well. And so just remember, saying no is a powerful word. It sets boundaries, and not enough salespeople you want to use and say the word no.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because on the flip side of this, the same. So a free trial is essentially a discount in a kind of backhanded way, I suppose. And I've always within our business been very adamant that we don't do free trials, and the reason for that is it's just so genuine that to deliver the experience that we want to for a new customer coming in, it costs us a fortune. All of our costs are up front. So if I was to just give that away, I couldn't afford to. I genuinely couldn't afford to give that away. And so it's almost from necessity. When somebody asks us, can we have a free trial? I'm really sorry, but no, we can't do that. We can give you our best price and the best experience, and that's what we do. So I think having that strength actually when somebody is trying to drive a bargain with you is really important. Great tip, that, mate.
Yeah. And look, the final tip out of the 7 is all about the close. Now, you will be so surprised at how many salespeople I meet. They've done the really, really hard work. And by the way, this happens to non-salespeople that are selling as well. They've done the hard work, but they struggle with actually asking the customer for the business formally. Now, the close can happen at various stages. It can happen after you've handled all the objections. It can happen at the point of negotiation. But there is a formal process where you have to actually ask for the business. And that is the process of you saying, shall I send you the order form? Are we agreed on the price? Whatever it is. But that's a formal process. And it's something that as a next step you have to add into your process, where you're physically asking for that business. And that ultimately is kind of the 7 tips that I wanted to share. But this slide kind of encapsulates all of it under in a metaphoric way that I like to describe. So what you're seeing there is an iceberg. And what everyone sees is the tip of that iceberg. Now, I know, and I've known Mike, as he said, for about a year, but what everyone looks at when they see Mike is the tip of that iceberg. He's really successful. He's got all of these things. He's got all these gadgets. He's got the fast cars, etc., etc., etc. But I know from having spent time with Mike, the reason he has all those things is because of the amount of time, energy, effort he's spent on developing those skills that are below the waterline. It's all the things that no one sees. And in social selling and the way that selling is now evolving, you have to develop those core skills. Because if you don't have those, you're setting yourself up. You're doing all of the hard work, spending this money on social selling, sales automation, etc. But then you're letting yourself down when you get in front of the client. You're not making the most of that opportunity. So for me, it's everything that happens below the waterline. It's all those skills that you have to develop that ultimately leads to your success. And that is the core kind of message and learning from what I've shared with you today. So look, Mike, that is...
Thank you, mate. What a great presentation. I'm very grateful for you taking the time to come and do that with us today. I mean, as I said, I'm blown away by your training to the point that I know we're going to be discussing how I'm keen to wrap that up in our offer. And I want to be able to provide London School of Sales training into our customers. Because I know it's a skill that we've all got to work at forever. It's like a keep fit type thing. It doesn't matter how long you've been doing it, you can still improve and you can still refresh. What's the best for any of the guys who want to check out your courses, Vinit? What's the best way for them to do that? What sort of investment are they looking at? That kind of thing.
So sales essentials, essential sales skills is 7 modules, and it's the tips from those 7 modules that I've shared. It's £20 a month. I said at the start, we're disrupting the industry and we want to actually help as many people as possible. It's £20 a month. You can cancel whenever you want. However, the ethos is that you use the courses as you're going through the challenges. The other benefit is that they are all CPD accredited. So they've been independently assessed for their content. And so we have that accreditation as well. We also have a sales management toolkit, which is more on the behavioral side. And that's £50 a month. But that is all about developing mindset. And it's developing those behaviors that are going to actually help you to build resilience and strength to kind of push on. So yeah, that's I'm pleased. I'm pleased that you've actually gone in and had a play with the system, and you like the way the courses are designed.
Very impressive, very, very. I mean, I was, the quality. It's just such a professional standard. I'm honestly, I didn't realize it was. I mean, £20 a month, so that's what $27, $28 for our American members.
That's of course it's excluding VAT, but
yeah, I mean, well, that's not really affect the Americans, but you're giving it away, mate. You really are. So people, I mean, if anybody, that's crazy. That is literally. And if any of you guys who've got sales guys on your team, even if you just buy it for them and get them to go and watch it, they're going to make more sales. So that's a good idea as well. And, maybe it's worth the money.
I should also say that what I've done is I'm a user of Beep, and I loved what Beep had. But after a few months of using Beep, and I was able to actually change my strategy of how I use Beep. So everything that I've just explained to you on this course, so I'm listening to what Mike's been saying about actually the changes that are taking place at LinkedIn, moving to a more content-led strategy. So my messaging now is more tailored towards my target audience. And I'm actually asking more open questions. I'm trying to get engagement in that way before I actually go in with a bigger pitch. And what I've found is that actually that sales cycle's getting longer. So what you have to do is when it's getting longer, you have to make sure that you've got enough engagement in there. So I think it's just, it works hand in hand, but you've got to constantly refine.
Yeah, it's the goalposts are moving, and they always have been, and they always will be. And when people comes out, and I say I've had a few people messaging lately going, "Oh, what's going on with LinkedIn and these invite limits?" Yeah. They're moving the goalposts, but they've been moving them forever. And the best thing you can do is get used to that and be adaptable and invest in your development so you can deal with that. And it's a little bit of what we're trying to do here in this group. Well, Vinny, I'm conscious of your time. I'm so grateful. It's lsos.co, I think, isn't it? The website. Awesome. Again, we'll post.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Oh no, my pleasure. Genuinely, my pleasure, mate. It's been an absolute delight. So we're back here next week, guys. I've got another guest for you as well. We've got Ian, one of the founders of a platform called hyperize.com. He's going to join us next week and share with us how we can really super personalize our messaging, our emails and things like that he's created some technology that's blown my mind. He's literally sending out emails with personalized Starbucks cups with their names on and things like that, and really eye-catching. He's got some really cool ideas around that. So he's going to be joining us next week. And fingers crossed, I want to try something next week, because this whole Clubhouse thing, I know I'm going to have to get roped into it. And you know me, I always like to try and be efficient and repurpose. So what we're going to shoot to do next week is actually stream this live via Clubhouse as well. And then once the live stream finishes here on Facebook, we'll be live on Clubhouse and we'll spend some time on there. Just with a room open, having a bit of a chat, answering some questions and that kind of thing as well. So just more technology to go wrong, but we'll see how that pans out. But Vinny, thanks once again, mate. I'm so grateful for you taking the time today. Thanks for everybody for joining us, and we'll see you again next week. Cheers, everybody. Take care.
Thanks.